really excited to be here with you for today's presentation on taking visuals to the next level in RightCapital. It's no secret that clear and concise visuals play a key role when it comes to helping many clients actually understand the information that's in front of them. And studies show that in general, most people tend to absorb and retain visual information, compared to information that they only read or hear, a lot more efficiently. So, common feedback that we get from our advisors is that one of RightCapital's greatest strengths as a planning tool and as a presentation tool is its data visualizations. Advisors often tell us that it's the visual elements that are really the conversation starters. And they play an important role in generating those more in-depth conversations with clients about their financial picture. So in today's presentation, we're going to be taking a look at the three premier data visuals in RightCapital, being the blueprint, the snapshot, and then the cash flow maps. As we're touching on each of those modules, I'll be talking about the ways that many of our advisors integrate these visuals into their presentations and how they effectively utilize them with clients. I am also going to be touching on reports as well and some of the ways that you can create very visual reports to help enhance client engagement and understanding. And one last thing I want to mention before we dive in for today, these webinars are fully interactive. So if you have any questions as we're making our way through things today, please feel free to ask those using the questions field in the GoToWebinar control panel. I've got about 35 to 40 minutes of prepared content for you today, and then we're going to be doing a live Q&A until the top of the hour. So I'll be sticking around to answer as many questions as I can here. Speaking of questions, I do see a couple coming in already that the sound went away. If a couple of you could just write in whether or not you can hear me, I would really appreciate it before I sort of dive into the presentation for today. Okay, perfect. It looks like the audio is good to go here. If the audio does go away, please send me a message here so I can pause and make sure that that's working correctly. Awesome. So I'm just going to take a quick moment to switch over to my RightCapital login here and we can get started. Perfect. Great. So I'm going to pull up our case study for today. We are going to be taking a look at the Steph and Ryan Gingrich plan. So, the first thing that I'm going to do today is introduce everyone to these clients and take us through the details of their current financial plan. But, as we all know, time is valuable and we don't want to waste it in our client meetings by, clicking around between tabs and going over the individual data entry inputs in the profile. So, to do this, I'm going to be utilizing the first of our visuals that we're going to dive into today, which is the Profile Blueprint tab. So, taking a quick look at our blueprint here, this takes all of our data entry inputs from across each of the different sections of the profile, and it recontextualizes that for us with some really clean, easy to understand visuals. So this is really going to show us where the clients currently stand, as well as where they want to go in the future. So what we really have here is a client-friendly, interactive overview of their financial lives. And advisors have told us that clients like the simplicity of the blueprint, leaving more time to address their questions during client meetings. So starting here in the net worth section of the blueprint, firstly, we can see all of the members of our household here. We have Steph and Ryan Gingrich, who are 46 and 44 respectively. We can also see that there are two children entered into this plan, Gabe age 13 and Alex age 16. And then, in addition to that, we see the overall net worth for this plan, as of today, as well as a breakdown of all of the assets and liabilities in the plan by owner. So we can see all of the different bank accounts and investment accounts that are owned by Steph, everything that's owned by Ryan on the right-hand side here, and then everything that's jointly held in the center. So, one of the premier features of the blueprint is that we can edit data entry directly within these charts, making it just extra flexible and dynamic in your presentations. So, we can click into these individual tiles to make any adjustments we might need. And this can be, if you're having your clients do some of their own data entry in RightCapital, this can be a really great way to sort of spot check their inputs. Maybe the client made a mistake, or maybe when you're having that conversation with your client, they point out a mistake in terms of one of their assets. You're able to fix it right there in the moment, and the entire plan is going to be updated to reflect that new information. So let's say that maybe Ryan made a mistake here in terms of one of his investment accounts. Maybe he underestimated the balance of his 401k. Now you can easily click into that tile, update the total balance, and then once we click save, the entire plan is going to be updated to reflect that change. So if we click into the net worth section of the profile here where all of our investments live, we can see the updated balance for Ryan's 401k as well. Perfect. The next thing that I want to mention with the blueprint is that we can sort of tailor the visuals here depending on what we may want to see and what we may not want to see for a given presentation. So by clicking the edit button in the upper right corner here, we're able to use this checklist to hide what we may not need to see. In this particular plan, there is a $0 credit card entered here for Ryan. Maybe we don't necessarily need to see that on our net worth chart here. You can click the edit button, you'll find that Discover card here for Ryan, and by unchecking that box and clicking Save, that's not removing the credit card from the plan, but it is just hiding the credit card from this screen for visual purposes. So in that way, you are able to sort of clean things up here in advance prior to that client meeting. And then the last feature here that I want to point out is that we can also add new items directly to our blueprint as well. So just using the net worth here as an example, maybe the client forgot a bank account. Hopefully most clients are aware of all of their assets, but we all know that that isn't always the case, unfortunately. Maybe Ryan overlooked a bank account with a couple $1,000s in it. We're able to very quickly click the add button in the upper right. We can add the bank account here to make sure that that's accounted for within the plan. So as you can see, this is not only a great visual backdrop for your conversations with clients, but it's also very flexible and very interactive as well. Perfect. So moving on to the goals tab of our blueprint, this is where we can start to take a look at the timeline of all of the goals that have been entered from today all the way through the end of the client's life. So the timeline is particularly popular with clients. It really maps out their future in a way that makes things a little bit more tangible. So we can see everything that these clients have planned during their life and during their retirement. So in this particular case, we have some college goals here for both Alex and Gabe. After those goals, we can see that our clients are currently planning to retire at age 65. Steph retiring first, and then Ryan retiring in the following year. We also have some long-term care, or rather retirement healthcare costs kicking in during those years as well. And then in the year that Ryan retires, we also see that there's a trip to Europe, a lifestyle vacation goal entered here. So similar to the net worth, you can click into these goals to see more information if you were curious about the timing of something or the cost of something. So that's an additional layer here. And then lastly, we have those long-term care costs kicking in at the very end of the plan here. So just like the net worth, we can click on individual goals to make adjustments. Maybe these clients need to make a change to the retirement ages. You're able to click into the retirement age goal, for example, here and update either of those numbers, and those changes will immediately reflect within the plan. And then something that this visual does on the timeline here that you wouldn't necessarily see if you were to just take a look at the profile goals tab and look at the individual inputs within the blueprint goals tab here, we can see not only the year for each goal, but also the ages that each of our clients will be in each year. So this is a really helpful way, if a client says to you, how old am I going to be when my kids finish graduating from college? We can easily identify that here, 53 and 52 respectively in the final year of the younger child's college goal here. So that can be a really convenient feature as well. And then, I do want to point out that again, we're able to tailor the visuals here depending on what we want to see if we click the edit button in the upper right corner. So, similar checklist here. If there's anything that we want to remove from our view, we can simply, uncheck that from our list, and that will, again, not be removed from the plan, but it will be hidden from the timeline here in the goals area. And then, an additional feature here for our goals timeline is something that impacts recurring goals in particular is, you'll notice you have the ability to choose whether or not these display, for the first year only, or if we want to see those for every year that they occur. So, for items like the retirement monthly expenses, retirement healthcare, and retirement long-term care costs, those are going to be set to display first year only by default. Because these are long-term goals, we wouldn't necessarily want these cluttering up our goals timeline each and every year. But maybe for something like our college goals here, maybe we know that these are going to be 4 years apiece. We don't necessarily need these to display every single year that they're occurring. We can swap these to display for first year only. And then if we click the save button here, suddenly we've cleaned that up. We can see Alex starts college in 2026, Gabe starts college in 2028. And if we needed to see more granular information there, we can always click into the goals and take a look at the timing and the cost as well. Of course, we can also add new goals directly to this page as well. So again, maybe the clients are looking over this timeline here and realize that there's a goal that is not accounted for. Maybe these clients realize that they want to add, maybe a legacy goal to the end of their plan. You can click the add button in the upper right, and you'll have access to all of the different goal cards that you might need. So in this particular case, we can maybe add a legacy goal. Maybe these clients want to leave $100,000 behind at the end of their life for their children to inherit. We can click save there, and then suddenly we will see that at the bottom of the timeline here. And again, the entire plan is going to be updated to reflect that new legacy goal that we've just added as well. Great. So last but certainly not least here, we have our income, savings, and expenses page. So what this page is going to do is it's going to consolidate all of our data entry inputs across income, savings, and expenses. And it's going to consolidate that for us into a single chart. So no need to click around between these different tabs to highlight this information for the clients. Everything is going to display right here on this chart in a nice clean visual. So, again, it's going to break things out by owner, so we can see anything that has Steph or Ryan listed as the owner respectively, and then anything that's joint in the center here. And this has the same functionality as the other two tabs that we looked at. We can click into these individual cards to make adjustments to anything that we might need to change in the moment. And maybe Ryan realizes that he meant to put $100,000 in here instead of $90,000 for his salary. We can very quickly and easily make that adjustment directly within the Blueprint tab. We can click the edit button in the upper right to hide individual elements that we may not need to see here. And then of course, we can add additional income, savings, or expenses here as well if the clients realize that there's something that we're not currently accounting for. So that's an overview of the profile blueprint page. Before moving on from the blueprint, I do have some reports here pre-prepared for us, and I want to be able to show everyone a side-by-side comparison of what our reports are going to look like when using the blueprint compared to when running a report with the same information without the blueprint. So I'm going to tab over to the first of these reports. This is going to be all of our profile inputs reflected as our balance sheet details for our net worth information, and then a summary of our user inputs for our income, savings, and expenses for our different family members, and then for our goals as well. So we can see that this is very line by line in a table here. We get all the same information, but not quite as visually appealing. And then to directly compare that, we have our same report with the same information, except we're instead using the blueprint. So starting with the first page, we can see our net worth visual. We can see our client's overall net worth, all the members of our household, and all of our assets and liabilities. We can take a look at our goals here on this timeline in the report as well. these clients have quite a few goals, so it extends onto a second page here. And then lastly, we've got our breakdown of the income, savings, and expenses. So these are relatively comparable in terms of the number of pages, these being both around 10 pages, but the visuals can serve to enhance client understanding compared to the line by line summary of user inputs. Great. So just to wrap up here in the blueprint, many advisors will start with the blueprint in their meetings or in their presentations, just to give clients an overview of their current financial picture and financial trajectory. And once they've covered all of this material, a lot of advisors will then move over to the snapshot page, which is the next key visual that we're going to take a look at today. So the snapshot lives in the dashboard section of RightCapital, and it is the default landing page in RightCapital as well. So, again, visual communication being one of the most powerful tools that we can use to, increase clarity and engagement with clients, making the snapshot another great visual in RightCapital that can really help boost clients' understanding of their financial plan. So, the snapshot is, for all intents and purposes, RightCapital's version of a 1 to 2 page report. And a lot of what we see here is information that's typically communicated with multi-page reports that clients either aren't reading completely or likely aren't fully understanding. So with the snapshot page, we can really avoid information overload. The snapshot is going to highlight key information in the plan, and it's going to pull everything that you need all into one place. So in addition to consolidating that information, it's also going to save you, as the advisor, from having to click around in RightCapital during your presentations. Maybe if you want to touch on their probability of success, followed by their net worth, and then segue into a conversation about their tax rate, that saves you from having to click into the retirement section to see the probability of success, and click back to the dashboard balance sheet to see their net worth, and then into the tax tab to see their effective tax rate. We can see all that information right here on the dashboard snapshot. So one of the premier features of our snapshot is that this page is fully customizable. So you are able to specifically tailor what we see on this page to the specific client that you're working with, or to the specific recommendations that you're going to be making to that client. So just to demonstrate that a little bit for you, we can drag and drop these tiles around on this page to sort of reorder what we see on this page here. So, if there's a particular order that you want to take your clients through, maybe a particular through line or story that you want to tell with some of your information here, you can drag and drop these tiles around to rearrange the order of what we see on this page to take the clients through things in a set order. You do also have the ability to remove any tiles that you may not need here by hovering your mouse over a particular tile and then clicking this X icon that will appear in the upper right corner. And then, additionally, there are a couple dozen other items that we're able to add to the snapshot here. So, we can choose from some other key metrics here, as well as, information that we can pull in from across the different planning modules in RightCapital, depending on what we may or may not need to see for that specific client or that specific client meeting. So, a lot of great information here that we have the ability to pull into the snapshot page. So not only are the visuals attention grabbing in and of themselves, but the layout of this page can be fully tailored to each individual client and to your unique advising style and presentation approach. The other really cool feature of the snapshot page, and the reason that this page has become so popular with advisors when it comes to presenting to clients in software, is that it can also be used to launch directly into other areas of the software. So by hovering your mouse over a particular tile here, you'll notice that an open item arrow appears in the upper right corner. And you can click this arrow to launch you directly into that specific area of RightCapital that we're pulling that piece of information from. So in this way, the snapshot becomes a little bit more dynamic, rather than just being a static 1 to 2 page report. And we've started to see more and more advisors start to use the snapshot as sort of the home page in their client meetings to help them navigate a little bit easier, depending on the direction of the conversation that they're having, with the clients. Maybe you're starting to talk a little bit more about their tax situation, and you need to launch into the tax tab to see more specific details. You can very easily launch into this particular tile, the effective tax rate, and suddenly we have access to more information in terms of the breakdown by tax type and things of that nature here. So whenever you launch into a new item like that, it's always going to open that in a new tab for you. So you can always click back into the first tab to take you straight back to the snapshot so that you don't lose your place there. Perfect. So, again, I've prepared some reports for us here that are going to show the differences between not using the snapshot and then taking the same information and presenting it with the snapshot instead. So taking a look first here at all of that information, not using the snapshot page. We first see our retirement analysis and asset simulation results. We can take a look at the client's net worth here as a part of their balance sheet. And then it takes us through the tax estimate, asset allocation, all of the information that we saw there on the snapshot page, broken out here on more individual pages. And then to directly compare that to the same information using the snapshot, suddenly we have all the same information prepared for us on a single page report. And it's not going to be quite as granular depending on what you might need to see, but we can pull in the most important information here and really highlight those key metrics all on one page. So of course I do want to make sure that I say that there is really no right or wrong way to present to a client, and of course there could be benefits to choosing to include some of this more detailed information depending on the specific presentation and the specific client that you're working with. But for our purposes today, you're really taking a look at the potential benefits that visuals can have. We see that it really cuts down on the number of pages in our report, taking it from a 13-page report to 7. And it's going to consolidate everything for us really nicely on this one page in a way that's very clean and very concise. So we can take what is potentially an overwhelming amount of numbers and line items for some people and present that all on a single page, just focusing on the most important elements and information. Perfect. So with that being said, I do want to segue into the last key data visualization that we're going to look at for today, which is going to be our cash flow maps. So the cash flows, of course, live in the retirement section in RightCapital. So I'm going to click into retirement and then cash flows. And the maps are actually the first tab that we see here in the cash flows. So cash flows in general are some of the more popular tabs in RightCapital. It's of course where we can start to see under the hood a little bit and take a closer look at all of the cash inflows and cash outflows year over year for the duration of the client's plan. And when our cash flow maps were introduced early last year, for the first time, this added a visual component to the cash flows for each and every year of the plan. So what we have first here is our waterfall chart. And this is also known as a Sankey diagram. So just to provide a little bit of background for you on the Sankey chart, this is something that is more commonly used by engineers and physicists and in other fields of science in particular. But over the last couple of years, this Sankey chart has really made its way into the financial planning industry as well. And what this chart really excels at is visually demonstrating the relationship between two sets of complex values, and the flow of from one set of values to another. And in our case, those values are, of course, the client's cash inflows and the client's cash outflows for each individual year of our plan. So using the timeline at the top of the chart here, you can choose which individual year you want to take a look at with the Sankey diagram, and we'll see that year reflected here in the chart. A great quality of life feature that I always like to point out with the timeline here is that it will highlight for you the years in which each of these clients are going to retire. So that's very easy to identify here just by scrolling across this timeline. So if you did want to highlight one retirement year or the other, those are very easily identifiable here. And in terms of what we see here in the waterfall, the cash inflows and cash outflows are going to be proportional in size to the dollar amount, making it very visually apparent where most of our money is coming from and also where it's going. It's going to make it really obvious whenever we have excess cash flows in our plan and whenever we have negative net flows in our plan as well. Taking a look at the first year of this plan, we do have some negative net flows occurring here. We can see that at the very bottom of this page, and we can see visually here that our income in terms of our clients' salaries is not enough to cover all of our expenses, taxes, and planned savings here. So these clients are trying to make some taxable savings at the end of each year, and we're not seeing those occur here as a result of this negative net flow. And scanning ahead a couple years here, maybe to 2028, this is a year that we can see where both of these clients' children are in college. So suddenly we see here that a good portion of their salary is now going towards education goals. So again, we see a shortfall here that's a little bit larger than in that first year we looked at. So again, great way to identify years where the client may have to dip into their investments a little bit to fully fund all of their expenses and goals. And then if we scan forward a little bit further here, we should be able to identify a year where we actually have a cash flow surplus. So in a year like 2034 here, we can see that in terms of our salary, we actually have some additional income that's not needed to fund our expenses and savings. So a portion of that is being saved as a result of a taxable savings card that is entered into this plan. But then we have about $30,000 here that's being spent off. So that's extra money that these clients could potentially be redirecting towards savings. So this waterfall chart is a really great way to sort of make it visually apparent to clients where their money is going, and it can be really helpful to facilitate those conversations about potential overspending and then potentially redirecting extra cash towards savings. In addition to that, if the clients are doing their own data entry in the plan, again, this can be a really helpful way to identify if those numbers are accurate. Many people have an idea of what they spend, but typically they need to drill down a little bit deeper to make sure that everything is fully accounted for. So let's say that maybe for 2024, these clients have underestimated their expenses, and maybe you're looking at the current year and you see a surplus here at the end, maybe $10,000 or $20,000, and the client turns to you and says, I definitely do not have an extra $20,000 at the end of each year. That could maybe be an indication that there are some expenses that are not being accounted for in the plan. So there's really a lot of value to be found here in terms of spot checking inputs and helping the client to better visualize the money that they're making and the money that they're spending. So this is a really great visual for clients who might be a little overwhelmed by all of the different columns and numbers in the cash flow tables here. If we were to take a look at this same information in the cash flows summary tab. Awesome. The second visual that we have available here in our cash flow maps tab, in addition to the waterfall chart, is going to be the breakdown. And this is really an alternative visual representation of that summary page that's a little bit more interactive and also a little bit more in line with other visuals in RightCapital. So the information that we see here is really the same as what we see on the Sankey chart, the waterfall diagram, but the breakdown is a little bit more similar to the layout that we see in the blueprint module when we're looking at something like their income, savings, and expenses. So some advisors do prefer the breakdown over the waterfall, and this is an option for you if you prefer. The main feature that the breakdown has that the waterfall does not have is that we can click into individual tiles to see a breakdown of what makes up that figure. So we can click into the salary, for example, to see a breakdown of the individual salaries. We can click into maybe the living expenses if there was a number of items making up their living expenses. Housing, for example, we can see a further breakdown of what specific housing expenses make up the total housing expense figure. Maybe if we skip ahead to a year where there are RMDs occurring, we can take a look at the individual RMDs, for each individual within the plan as well. So there is some additional functionality here in terms of being able to zoom into specific income, and expenses within the breakdown chart. And then, in terms of what year we're taking a look at, we have the same timeline at the top here. It's going to highlight our clients' retirement years for us, and we can zoom in on a specific year and take a look at all of our cash inflows and cash outflows. And in case I haven't mentioned it yet, you can also choose which plan you're viewing here with these cash flow charts with this little drop-down menu in the upper right corner here. So this can be really helpful for making comparisons. Maybe you have some different what if scenarios set up here, and maybe you want to directly compare your inflows and outflows in scenario A compared to scenario B. You can very quickly and easily switch back and forth between the plans that you're looking at here using this drop-down in the upper right corner. Perfect. So once again, I do have some pre-prepared reports for you to show what a report would look like with our cash flow summary tables compared to the cash flow maps visuals. So first, we're going to take a look at a report here with the cash flow summary tables. And we can see, we have a great amount of information here, but it's very line by line, a lot of numbers and columns here, potentially overwhelming for some individuals. Maybe if you have a client who's an engineer or a mathematician or something, maybe they thrive on the cash flow tables, but not all individuals, are able to fully digest the information that they're seeing here. But if we take a look at that same information using the cash flow maps, suddenly we have a little bit more clarity here in terms of what we see. In addition to significantly cutting down on the number of pages as well. Maybe we do just need to zero in on the inflows and outflows for a specific year here. Maybe we don't necessarily need the cash flow summary information for every single year of the plan in that report. This cash flow summary table report is going to be 20 pages compared to the cash flow maps report, which is only 9, including the cover page and the disclosure. So again, we have these nice visuals instead of numbers in a table, which can be more digestible for some clients. Great. So clicking back into our case study here, the last thing that I want to take a look at today is running a report that's strictly visual, using each of the modules that we've looked at here today. So for that, I'm going to click into the More menu in the upper right corner here, and then click into the Report tab, and I'm going to run this report for us live. We're going to first select the Snapshot page here. Then I'm going to scroll down a little bit and click into the cash flows item here on our checklist. We can then select the cash flow maps here at just the top. And then lastly, we're going to scroll down a bit and make sure that the blueprint is included as well. If you did want to be a little bit more selective with which sections of the blueprint you'd like to include, you can pick and choose here, but we're going to include all 3 of these for today. And then I'm going to click Download Selected Pages and run that report for us. You can take a quick look. So, we're going to have all of our visuals here in this report. So we start with our snapshot page. We get an overview of all of the key elements within our plan. We can then take a look at our cash flow maps, which we currently have set to 2024. So we can see all of our cash inflows and cash outflows for our current year here in this waterfall chart, in addition to the breakdown chart as well. If that's something you also wanted to include. And then you're scrolling down even further, we have our blueprint section, highlighting the client's assets and liabilities, highlighting that timeline of our client's goals, and then highlighting the income, savings, and expenses in our plan as well. So, I'm going to click back over here. If you want to maybe take a screenshot of this or, make a note of which areas that I have selected here for this report. And, speaking of, that does sort of segue nicely into the, last thing I wanted to touch on here. If you are someone that prefers to present to clients in software, we can set up a very similar presentation view in a client's planning access checklist rather than in a client's report checklist here. So that's going to allow you to set up the same visual layout, but it's going to be in software instead of in a PDF report. So just to show you, what that looks like, I'm going to isolate Steph Gingrich here. And then I'm going to click into the Planning Access tab here. So, we can again select those exact same pages here on this Planning Access checklist. I'm going to highlight the snapshot. I'm going to highlight the cash flow maps. And then I'm going to highlight the profile blueprint in particular. And once I click Save, the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to open this plan in Client Access mode. So this is going to allow me to see the client's plan specifically using the selections that we've made here on this planning access checklist. So if I open the plan This way, we're going to have that tailored view with only our visuals. So, we're first going to have that snapshot. We're then going to take a look at the cash flow maps here. And then lastly, we have our profile blueprint section as well. So, of course, you can decide to include additional pages here depending on the specifics that you're wanting to take a look at with the client, in that meeting. But, by using the planning access checklist, you're able to create a sort of tailored presentation view that you can then use in your client meetings to sort of cut down on the number of modules that you see on the screen during those client presentations. Perfect. So that does mostly cover it for the content I wanted to touch on today. I do want to quickly just point out, one last thing here. You do have the ability to save templates for pretty much all of these things we've looked at today, which can be really helpful in terms of, saving you time, setting some of these things up. So in your advisor portal, if you click into the gear icon templates area, you do have the ability to save templates for reports, planning access, and the snapshot page. So, if you did want to create that sort of visual report layout and have that saved as a template, we can always add a new template here and make that specifically, for client visuals. And then we can make those exact same selections here and, choose to, save that as a template going forward, just to make our lives a little bit easier so that, we can have this pre-saved in advance. And then when you're within a client plan, looking to run one of these reports, you'll see this, as an option for you. It'll just be an option that we can select within the client plan. I'm just going to take us back in here so we can take a quick look. Go back to the More menu, report section, and we then have our visuals report template here. So that makes it a lot easier to sort of just very quickly and easily dial that in and then run that report. So we're able to do the exact same thing with planning access. You're able to create potentially a template for visuals for planning access. So you'd be able to set that up in the exact same way here. And then when you're preparing to make that presentation with that client, you're able to select from your templates here as well. So maybe you have a visuals view here for your planning access. You can select that here and very quickly and easily save that in anticipation of that client meeting. And last but not least, we have a template for the snapshot as well. Maybe you have a particular snapshot layout that you prefer to use for the majority of your clients. You're able to add new templates here. You can name those whatever you'd like, and you can exactly like the functionality within the client plan. You can drag and drop these tiles around to rearrange the layout, delete anything you might not need, and add additional items here as well. And once these are saved, you can very quickly and easily apply these to a specific client as well. So, I'd be able to apply that to our case study for today very quickly and easily, and that would overwrite their existing snapshot template. Perfect. So that does cover it for everything I wanted to get to today. We're confident that by using some of these visuals, you'll be able to increase client engagement, drive those more in-depth planning conversations, and provide some valuable takeaways for your clients.